So I'm designing a memoir, part of my own life, a story that actually happened to me, a way that I arced in real life. And after I've thought about the before, which was whichever point in my life that was, and compare it to the after, which is where I am right now, then I really take a look at how I changed. What were my major milestones? What were the biggest challenges? What was the most meaningful stuff I learned from it? What observations do I remember so that maybe I can get some sense memory, really feel like what it was like to be there? I do this because the next major step of planning the script is figuring out how it's going to fill all those pages, figuring out what each chapter is going to be, and to figure out the chapters, we need to figure out what the major scenes are. What's the audience's first impression? What's their last impression? What's the midpoint? What's the end of Act 1, the beginning of Act 2? An easy way to get all that stuff is to think about my own midpoint, my own Act 1 closer, what I want the audience's first and last impressions of me to be in this story. So after I pick my before and after, I think about how I changed, each major step of my change. What were my major milestones? So for example, if we're returning to me having a really toxic, terrible experience at grad school, I didn't become a screenwriter. I moved home for a little bit with my parents. My teachers kind of beat the ability to write scripts or any type of fiction out of me. I really couldn't write fiction after grad school, but I still really liked story structure. That was when I really started digging into this story structure stuff. And so I talked about it a lot to my parents, and my stepfather, who I love, who's a great guy, you could just watch his eyes glaze over as I talked. Because I was using jargon, I was using weird words like protagonist and midpoint all the time. And eventually my stepfather said, I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy. If you're giving me all this fancy words, it's just right over my head. You're wasting your fancy stuff on me. Which was a nice way of saying, God, you're boring. So that kind of taught me to boil an idea down to make it more conversational. And I realized if I can teach my stepfather, who I love, I think he's great and I think he's really smart, but if I can take a complicated idea and explain it to my stepfather in a way that's simple enough for him to understand and short enough to maintain his attention span, then I could probably teach. Now my stepdad is a big movie nerd. Now he's seen more movies than I have. And he's got a better memory, so he remembers them all. He's a better film student than I am. So that was his arc, but maybe it was my midpoint between toxic, ruinous grad school experience and me teaching this class now.